All right, looks like we are live. Yes, we are. Okay. Welcome everybody to this live stream of us. We are a startup in the edtech space in the country with one of the largest young population, and we would know more about our work and initiative in the due course of time while we have this interesting conversation with our business leader and CEO, Mr. Anand Verma today. Welcome, Anand.
Hi everyone. It's my pleasure to actually interact with everyone out here. Uh,
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Anand. Thanks for taking the time out for all of us. I would like to take a couple of minutes to introduce Anand. Now, Anand is one of those very few lucky ones who had been able to explore a lot of different things in his career spanning a decade and a half. He is a technical postgraduate with a gold medal from one of the topmost colleges in our country and have contributed to the growth of many well-known brands in different industries like FMCG, real estate and construction, education, to name just a few. Today we have Anand with us where we would talk about his experiences. Now, to begin with Anand, the year 2021 had seen India make a mark for itself in the global entrepreneurial ecosystem. While the country had seen and grappled with a very difficult time during the pandemic along with the whole world, the Indian uh, entrepreneurs continued building great businesses for the country. They created unicorn brands, they created excellent innovations during this year. Now, for us being outsiders, it looks very glamorous to be an entrepreneur, all that success, all that exciting things to do, newer things to try. You've been a part of that space. I would like you to talk about that. What is it like in reality? How is it? How's this whole spectrum of entrepreneurship? Over to you.
Great question actually. I think this is a very exciting time. Uh,
Mm,
if I recall, lately even Indian Parliament talked about startups, amount
yeah.
of funding, amount of number of unicorns coming up in the country. This clearly shows that the acceptance levels of the startup ecosystem is now well founded, and there are many more people out there aspiring to be the next generation entrepreneurs. And I really feel great about it. I really feel glad that our country is able to uh, build enterprises, build new innovations which are required to solve our problems and also the problems of the world. So, like I said earlier, it's a very exciting time, and this decade is like I consider that it can be a huge opportunity for a country like ours,
Mm-hmm.
because at the stage which we are right now placed, we
Mm-hmm.
can actually create a big difference to the entire startup ecosystem, not just only in India but also globally. And this is also a time when India has been recognized as one of the hotspots in startup ecosystem. Where a lot of SaaS companies have actually created that image that this is the land of SaaS startups. Similarly, I think that this kind of terminologies will be used more often, where India will be considered as the land of XYZ, let's say startups.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of revolution happening, and that also basically has creates a lot of euphoria among
Mm.
people like us, and also a lot of young people who are maybe within colleges, even schools, because I think
Yeah.
some of the awareness levels have even trickled down to school students, where they
Yes.
aspire and dream to actually do big when they, let's say, reach a stage. And there are a lot of creators who have started now coming right from the school level as well. So overall, it's a very exciting time. It's going to remain exciting, I think, for maybe 1 or 2 decades. I can't forecast what happens thereafter, but at least that's how I see things. However, if I remove the whole sheen from the whole equation, I think that there is a lot of difficult paths which one takes to realize the overall result. And as an entrepreneur, the journey looks very glamorous once you are successful.
Mm.
So, as a budding entrepreneur, as somebody who is trying to dream big, you always have this image in mind where you are at least having a corner office, you are well poised, to, let's say, conquer the world. But all that happens once you have already done it and aced it. But behind the scenes, there is a lot of toil which happens, a lot of alone journeys where you are trying to struggle, a lot of doubtful moments when you doubt more on yourself than, let's say, what others believe in you. And those are the I think real those are the I think real world scenarios which happen in a journey of an entrepreneur more often than, let's say, the success which comes to few, the ones who have braved it out and have reached the shore. So that's a take from my side. Obviously, the upside is like huge. So despite all the hardship, despite all the tough journey, I think I'm expecting more and more people to actually jump into it, because collectively there is a huge outcome, not just for oneself but also for a lot of people around you. You create value for a lot of people around you as consumers of your services or product. You also create a lot of upside for your own team members, employees, as you build businesses. So that's how I see it.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that we can do, being a country like ours, being entrepreneurs, is creating employment. I mean, like the amount of young professionals, youth that we have, that's one of the ways we just can't look away from. Now, I have a couple of friends who like say that I am the electrician, I am the peon, I am the clerk, and I am the CEO and the brand ambassador and the photo red carpet worker also for my brand. So that's quite an interesting journey and a lot of huge spectrum to do things with. Now, you've been a part of it. You've been a
Yeah.
part of the corporate work culture, where you get couple of those things that entrepreneurs aspire once you join a corporate, and you have seen that, and you have also started things from scratch and done all of that. Now, having being at both the ends and experienced both of them, which one, I'm like, I know it's going to be a difficult choice, but which one would you pick and why? What do you like in which one?
So I'll call this as a tricky question.
Yeah, it is.
But you're right. I think I'll go back to the previous question when we said, like you all of you know, being an entrepreneur typically means that you open the shop, you even shut down the shutter, and then go home. So you end up doing everything which happens between these two events. So the kind of mindset which is required and the kind of, let's say, skill sets you require, both the mindset and skill sets you need to acquire. Either you do it on the job, that means when you fall many times and then you stand up again and then you learn these things, or there are certain things which you can acquire or learn from others. There are already people who have done it. Now coming back to, let's say, my journey so far, yes, you are right. In a way, I have spent half of my career has been in corporate, typically one company, and the rest half has been mostly in startups. It's a very different world out there. Both has its own pros and cons. Both has its own charm. Both has its own pitfalls. It like one has to find out like what appeals to them. So let me talk about each one of these journeys, how it worked out for me. So typically in a corporate, things are well laid out, and this I started my corporate journey just immediately out of college. So for me, it was really exciting because I worked for ITC, which was already completing 100 years of its journey.
Yeah.
Uh, when I joined it, maybe a year or two, ITC completed 100 years. And it was fascinating to see like 100 years was a big milestone being celebrated then. I appreciate it now much better because I realized spending a decade building a business which can survive a decade and then maybe survive few decades, it itself is a mammoth task.
Yeah.
And a business which would have survived all kinds of, let's say, events, all kinds of pandemic like black swan events, I think it's commendable. And then you go and look back at what they did. I think you look back at what kind of foundations they had, the organization had, what kind of processes the organization was using, what kind of people were there to power up those kind of businesses. So you learn a lot from a very organized setup. I could learn a lot early in my career. and that shaped some of my decision making and also my abilities when I continued my journey further. So I give a lot of let's say credit to my early days that I could learn from a well established, well oiled machinery, a lot of bright people who were there right from let's say my peer level to very senior. There were people who had spent their entire lifetime building a company like that. So you could learn a lot of characteristics, a lot of insights. You learn by seeing and observing and also interacting with such individuals. However, when I stepped out, I felt a sudden shock because that was indeed a shock. I wasn't used to it because there were certain things which were taken for granted, and you thought this anyways happens everywhere. But when you come to a startup world where everything is chaotic, there is no order, and you have to build everything, literally everything. Then at that, and you are also chasing very high speed growth. So when you have to run such sprints, and if you are a marathoner, then these sprints don't work out for you. And the reverse is also true. If you are a person who can run 100-meter sprints, running a marathon is a very different ball game. So how do you transition from being a marathoner to a sprinter or a sprinter to a marathoner? That was a mammoth task for me. But yeah, I think I learned, learned a lot of things in that process. That also helped me become better, because there is, like I said, there is a best of both the worlds, and both of these setups required very different mindset, very different skill sets. So maybe when I was in corporate, it required a mindset to follow a very structured way of approaching things, build or follow processes. You are also thinking more long term, not just immediately short term. While in a startup world, you are at such a pace that you can only think, let's say, a little short term. You have a high level visibility on what you want in long term, but the journey changes so much, it changes so fast, so you can't have a very fixed strategy for a long term. Similarly, in terms of mindset, here you need a mindset of growth, and for that you have to uh, let's say make your ability superlative, because like we discussed in an earlier question, you end up multiplexing, you end up playing multiple roles. Maybe what you would have played in 10 years in a corporate, you would have ended up playing in, let's say, 2 years or 3 years. So the pace is immense, and but people who enjoy the thrill, people who enjoy that kind of adventure will like it. People who may not, let's say, like that kind of chaotic environment may find actually a better suited environment being in a corporate, where it's not that you are not making an impact. If you are in a corporate or a startup, you are making impact wherever you are if you are doing a good job. But the only thing is that you need to find your ground, which
Mhm.
environment, which weather works best for you, and you
Right.
settle down at a place where you think this is the right weather for me.
Right. Yeah, certain things work for someone beautifully and not so beautifully for some other. Yeah, now we just spoke about creating a brand which can last a year to a decade. And here you were a part of a brand which completed a century. And it is not only a brand, it is a part of our lives in some or the other way phenomena. 100 years is too long a time. If I look back at my journey, and you would also agree, we have seen a huge change in the whole arena of workplace. Like we started, I remember when I started, it used to, I had seen computers working on Linux. We had seen, we had seen people using open office, and today we talk about cloud, we talk about cloud collaboration. We can have one single document where people access, 50 people can work on it together. That's the power of technology. Apart from that, there's a lot changing. I mean, like, we have seen it, and it's only going to change even more rapidly. Now that brings me to an extremely significant point, that how do you see the future of work and workplaces in India or globally? How do you think we would, or what do you think we would see in the next 5 to 10 years and maybe more? And what exactly we should be preparing ourselves for?
You're right, Amrita. I think when we look back, uh, maybe everybody is going to say this thing that in my lifetime I have seen sea change.
Yeah.
But I think it is true for every generation, maybe preceding us as well.
Maybe.
Because maybe a generation before me were the generation for them, the radio was the predominant mode of entertainment or information consumption. For us as kids, it was television. We are fortunate to even embark on a internet era in our own lifetime such an early stage. So we have seen, let's say, a lot of things in our own lifetime. Our previous generation also actually saw television, radio transition, and they are also the ones who are seeing the internet. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm amazed, like this whole dawn of internet, this whole new set of businesses, new set of services, what smartphone has created. Um, it has created a very different paradigm shift in consumer behaviors altogether,
Yeah.
and also how we see the world. So maybe certain things we assumed and understood the world in a certain way has rapidly changed, and that
Yes.
rapid transformation post maybe 2000 is like phenomenal, and this is acknowledged by every generation right now. I don't
True.
think that any generation will say that, oh, for me it was like the same all throughout. I remember me getting into college from school. So while we had those DOS programs in school, but first
Yeah.
time when I was asked, like I went to a cafe and trying to search for my own result, um, and it was like a different deal because I couldn't figure out like where is the browser, how to type the URL and log in. So those were the kind of things which were like I remember like that was one day, and now today like we pre technology we almost do everything using technology. So it's a very different world in, let's say, just 15-20 years, and the space is going to accelerate further. I don't expect anything to either
Mm.
plateau or go down. The
Yeah.
pace of change will continue. So I think one constant which is there is always a change. So that has been the case. Similarly, in workplace, you are right. I think as all of us as working professionals or entrepreneurs, whatever you are doing, I think the rules of the game have changed significantly. And let me tell you, I think COVID pandemic unsettled a lot of things.
Yeah.
So what we would have not ever imagined or expected, it just happened within a span of 2-3 years, which nobody still wants to accept. But now we are in a post-pandemic world, which will see another wave of changes because now people have experienced the change to a to such an extent that anything which is now going to be crazy, uh, people are going to accept it in no time. So that's how I see it, and that puts a lot of pressure on businesses and working professionals because businesses are trying to adapt every day, and for startups, it is like this is what you do every day. You try to reinvent yourself. You try to evolve so that you can become better and bigger. Similarly, as a working professional, it's the same. Most of us have been changing our ways of working. Most have been changing the ways we look at the world and the business or our work. And all of this change is creating a lot of pressure. However, there are certain individuals who are better prepared because their initial training, their initial, let's say, part of the journey, their current work environment, their current peers, all of that, let's say, contributes to their ability to change and adapt and grow and perform better. However, there is a sizable section which still struggles, and this struggle is not only at a physical or a skill level; it's also at a mental level when you're going with this kind of massive change. However, what I expect is that maybe the next set of people who are coming into the workplace, they are going to be done better than what we are because they are going to come with a lot of things right from day one which we would have learned in, like, let's say, like 10 years. So things would I would have learned in 10 years. I am expecting that maybe people who are going to enter workforce now, they are going to know it all. So that's my expectation. If that's not happening, I think it requires another round of debate on what can we do to empower them so that they're already ready. So that's one perspective. Another thing is, I think in terms of how we are adapting to the change and how we are performing, there are certain things which are let's say, constant as well. Like I said, so one constant is the change. Another constant is there are some timeless things, concepts which remain applicable throughout. So, like your foundational skills, your ethics, your way at looking things, your ability to adapt, your there are certain characteristics which remains a bedrock of your abilities, and those things actually propel you forward. So I also look at those innate skills, those innate foundational skills which you develop. Like I said, you develop over a period of time, right from your childhood, right from your homeschooling, home learning, to your school, to your college, and then your workplace. What all things you learn, they form the foundational skills. Yeah, if you have got a great journey that far, you are better prepared to handle certain situations. If you are less prepared during this part of the journey, then you have to learn and then maybe apply when you are working as a professional there. So that's how I see things. So there are those foundational skills are very, very important, and that's something I also call it human skills, or you can call it whatever you want. So your cognitive skills and your human skills are going to remain timeless. They're going to remain true irrespective of digital age coming in, irrespective of
Yeah.
internet taking over a lot of business models. But those are the very, very important skills.
Yeah, even with all the AI driven solutions, even with all the automation, I think we would never be able to do away with that. The human skills, the interpersonal skills, the relationship building skills that one has, and that creates an edge for you as a candidate. Now, talking about the points that we just did, you are right now creating a business. You're right now creating a solution around employability. We are trying to address that problem statement right now that we have in our country, and it's time that we do it because it's only going to increase. uh, from your perspective, why do you think this is important? Why we as a country, why the young professional in our country need this, and what is the problem statement that you're trying to resolve through this solution?
I think the way I look at it is like our country is so big. We are still at a stage of a development cycle as a country, that our problems are very, very unique as compared to maybe developed world. At the same time, since we are also part of the globalized world, however hard we may try, as a country, we have certain needs and we also have to contribute to the overall ecosystem. So the youth, I think India as a country has the largest youth population right
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
and rightly so. A lot of experts, a lot of learned people have talked about that this is our biggest asset at this point of time. We also call it human capital, apart from other capital we have as a
Yeah.
country. So how do we build this human capital to the advantage of our own country and also the world? It's not only restricted to this geography. So that's the challenge. Now there are multiple ways and multiple sub segments to solve this or build this whole solution. But one specific thing which we picked up is that there are a lot of people who have a degree, who come out of colleges, who are studying in college, but they're not able to start their career well. And that actually creates a lot of angst. It is also one of the most debated topics in current times. So it's good to debate, but what we can do is we can start taking some baby steps around solving this kind of problem. So what we did, I think we narrowed down on this problem and we said that what can we do about this. So we saw that uh, there are n number of, let's say, work opportunities available, and there are so many people available. So I don't think that there is a challenge of available talent. For every job out in the country, you have maybe more than 10 people vouching for it at any point of time. 10, I'm just taking a very, very conservative number. This number
Yes.
from 100 to even 1,000, depending on which job we are talking about. There
Yes.
are government jobs which where the aspirants, let's say the number is so skewed, the selection rates are so low that more than 99% people end up just not getting it.
Hmm.
So we live in that kind of country. And also the reality changes drastically based on where we are. So if we are in a metro, the reality is very different. If we are in tier 2, 3, 4 cities, the reality is slightly different. We come from which kind of college we come from. So if you come from tier one college, maybe you worry about what's your package. Are you the one whose parents can go and boast about maybe a CR plus or not? But if you come from tier two colleges, you are happy if your parents can proudly say that, hey, my son or my daughter actually got a job just immediately after the college. And then there are so many other tier or a majority of section of the population which actually toils hard even after trying their best. So we have lived in an era where our parents used to tell that do your best in education and please focus here, try your best. This is it. I think this is your right time to actually build your career. So every year, your entire journey through schooling, college, this is what you heard, right? This is give your best shot. This is it. But when you let's say complete and get your degree and you think that you have aced it, now your career is set, you realize that it is just begun, and that's the root shock. So this transition from college to work, people expect it to be the smoothest possible thing, but it is not, because that is the transition or the pivot where you either tip and fall down, or you can just jumpstart your career on a flying mode. So both the scenarios exist. It depends on who you are, what are your conditions, what are your background information. That determines, let's say, currently how you are going to do it. However, situation is going to change very fast, because with the kind of changes we are seeing, the kind of era we are living, people, their parametric realities are not going to determine their outcomes. They can actually do many better things. They have many more opportunities. The only thing which one needs to be is better aware and actually apply themselves. So, are we better aware about what we want to do and how we want to do it? And are we really going to put up enough effort required to do that? So, that's the kind of era we are living in. Around this, we started building our business, and we said that let's do one thing. We focus on the early professionals, people who are studying in colleges, and they are going to be the future of work. uh, what we will do is we will prepare them for what is coming ahead. We will prepare them for the skill sets, and from not just the skill sets just to get a job, but to actually thrive in a job. So that's the whole aim and aspiration with which we are moving ahead. And we think that it's just a zeroth hour. We have to go a long way. We have to build a lot of solutions. We have to build a lot of things to actually enable the whole generation to be the best and most productive of all our times.
Great. Those were some very great points because, yes, through our journey, we have seen the struggle. We all have learned it the hard way because we never had this kind of solutions available for us at that point in time. So, extremely relevant and significant problem statement that you're trying to solve, and it will be a great journey, I'm sure. So we've spoken about workplace, we've spoken about the solution. Let's know a little more about you. Let's talk a little more about your journey. Now, you come from a premier and elite institution of our country, the kind of institution that people aspire for. They work hard, they toil for years, they'll forget everything and they prepare for IITs. And once you get it, actually, your parents have a reason to, boast about it. I remember anybody in our neighborhood, we come from a small town, got through JEE, and it used to be a celebration. For 7 days, people are coming home and you're being fed sweets, and there's a treat because somebody's son has got or daughter has got into a crack JEE. So, for somebody who's been a part of an institution which carries such a strong legacy, how was your experience when you started your work journey? Was it easy? Was it smooth, like how we believe people who see it from outside? Did you have your own challenges, own struggle? Do you feel that what we are trying to do now today, this with this solution that we are talking about, do you think if this existed then, had it been any helpful? How would you look back at it and talk to us about it?
Oh, so I smiled. Sorry for that smile. I know the word IIT is generally very hyped, and
Yes.
people have very different notions. So obviously, our parent, friends, families feel so great about it. As an individual, you feel very great about it. But when you just enter the institute and you have so many people around you who are like genius, who are also very, very highly competitive like you, and there's so wide variety of people,
Hmm.
then you start realizing that it's just another world. It's not. You can just keep saying that okay, you will rejoice in this whole glory of yeah, you have cracked it, you have entered. I think it's again another world where you start realizing that it's not going to be easy coming here. And once you get out of the college, you may still rejoice that at least you have made it successfully. So even that is a very very big success, that you made it successfully out of college and you step into the world of corporate. So all of these transition points brings those memory that your all joys, sorrows are very very momentary, and you are still in a. If you see the grander scheme of things, you are in a very very long journey throughout, and every small and all of these are like small small events in the whole journey. So you have to comprehend all the situation and then prepare yourself for ahead. So if I talk about my journey, yeah, maybe getting into IIT was a decision influenced by what you hear and what you think is going to change your life, and I pursued that. I was lucky. I was also, I think, grateful to the whole experience I had back at the institute, and the kind of people I could learn from, the kind of people I interacted with, the immense amount of, let's say, uh, I'll say peer or network effect which comes into picture. Because there are times when you do things because at least you get to see great people around you doing certain things, and it also propels you to actually do better. So all of that helped me, I think, at a personal level. But when I entered into the workplace again, my feeling was that it was again starting at zero again, because whatever you may do in your college, when you step down into a workplace, you still feel as if it is just like zero of again a new era of learning or a new stage of learning, because whatever you see is again so new. I remember like when I was inducted into ITC, and this was the first time maybe you step into a five-star hotel and you stay there, and it's
Yeah.
so such a different world, and you have a very very different feeling. For me, who has never been to such a place and then getting such a hospitality, trying to adjust to the etiquettes. Now, very very small things like you start realizing that you are out of place, and this happens. Maybe I'm giving an example which is more personal to me in terms
Mm.
of professional level. Again, it's the same thing. There were things which you did at college and you thought that you have learned it and aced it, but when you step into workplace, you again need to relearn most of those things, and you feel that okay, you try to listen to people thinking that they shouldn't understand whether you know it or not. They should at least feel that you know it and you can do it. I think that one of the best benefits which I got, let's say, coming from such a system, is that you are more confident around that whatever situation may be, you will figure out. I think that's the only confidence one which one has.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
That is what has stayed maybe across even till today. Uh, there are times when what I am doing with my own team, there are times when people ask me questions, I feel that jitter within me, that what can I tell? But the belief that yes, I will prevail and I will figure out remains the same. And I think your day zero of learning will you will feel every time you are making a shift in your life. So my first shift from college to workplace, it was a day zero of learning then. And maybe what I'm doing, maybe the shift when I started jumped into a startup, that was again a day zero of learning. A lot of things I had to relearn, and sorry, even today it remains the same. So the whole mindset of actually trying to learn has been the constant, and that has helped me. That is one learning. That means you always have that learning agility, learning mindset. You think that you can learn from anyone. I remember when I jumped into ITC as a management trainee, one of the challenges which you face is like everybody you meet has either spent their lifetime in a single company, or you are dealing with people of very varying ages, mostly senior or let's say older in age. And there are times when you have to obviously drive those people towards a common goal. So that kind of scenario was unsettling, but you learn by actually seeking help from the relevant people. You also learn by applying yourself, and those are the things which you can learn on the job. But there are a lot of things which I believe that maybe I could have preponed. I could have learned earlier, either in my schooling or in my college. Um, had I get better opportunity, or even I would have tried to push myself hard to learn those things early in my career or early in my life.
Yeah. Now, talking about it, this whole journey of interactions to secure an employment and the initial phase, we also know that you have been the placement coordinator of your college, right? So, you have that experience also of uh, coordinating and arranging this. You have the experience of going through it, and from the beginning of your career you've also been part of the recruitment drives of different, so you've seen the whole cycle of it, the whole recruitment and placement cycle of it. Now, it would be great if you can take our viewers through, and the listeners and the viewers through the process, and what do you think is needed to increase one's chances of securing offers apart from what we have just spoken.
Oh, so you're making me relive my earlier within the college journey as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was very interesting because it was a huge responsibility, and it was also a very, very important thing for me because I learned a lot, and those were my early days.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'll tell you, I think there is one myth that people think that if you are from tier one, everything is easily laid out.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it helps a lot. Having your CV or your resume talking about some credentials which you can boast of, or at least it will help you get an entry, is a great thing. But if you believe me, I think it's only an entry pass. So it only helps you enter the stadium. But what you have to go and perform, that nobody else is going to help you with. So that is something which you have to do it on your own. And typically, I visualize it like a swimming competition. If your pass can only help you enter the swimming pool, but you will have to swim yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are trying to swim, you are given a very standard set of, let's say, costumes. So whatever you would have brought, all kind of paraphernalia, you will have to keep it aside, and then you have to jump into the pool, and then you have to perform to your skill and ability. So what happens is this whole analogy I am giving, that it requires training. It requires
Yeah.
honing your skill sets for by which you can perform in that kind of competition. Now you may say that why everything is sounding like a competition, but in a way, when you are in a world out there, even as trying to build a business, you are competing with n number of factors. And when you are working as an individual in a workplace, you are still competing with many more people out there because it's our hard reality. We are such a huge country. The opportunity which I have today, there are thousands of people might be just vying for it. So it's a competition out there. You have to be better even than the best version of yourself. And how do you do it? So if I look back, maybe as a placement coordinator at that one time, the goal was that okay, let us get everybody across the line. So can everybody get a job? I can't comment on whether their choice or no choice, but let's get everybody a job. I think that was a goal in my mind, and for which we built a large student volunteer team. We built a full set of things. We had a certain legacy already built in. We have a brand name where we can attract companies, but still there are a lot of challenges. There are a lot of problems which needs to be solved. That was also the year. In our year, we were able to roll out the placement automation successfully and more formidably, which actually automated the whole placement scenario. It was built by one of the fabulous, I think, coding guy. But the whole operationalization actually gives a momentum that you can have a paradigm shift in how you approach and do things. So that was one experience. I think that was also one of the first experiences for me on how you can actually change the behavior and change the way we work. Second thing was that a constant challenge was, despite being tier one college, despite maybe we used to call it geographical disadvantage or XYZ. But when I'm on the other side from an employer point of view, I see that for employers, what matters is the right talent. They don't care about maybe will I go to this IIT and let's say not go to another IIT, will it create a furor and all that. I think employers are always hungry for talent, and businesses are good businesses are built on talent. So the biggest challenge in how can you get the best talent available. But there are so many other companies also trying to attract the same talent, and hence there is a competition among the employers, and you try to find out the best methods to identify the best talent in the least time possible. So that's the problem statement on the other side. As a student, you want to get the best job offer possible, and let's say get it as early as possible,
And
because
as many as possible also.
yeah, because
Yeah.
I remember like guys crying down maybe after day one of placement. So the pressure is so huge
Yes.
that
Yes.
if you are not successful on day one, it takes a it takes an emotional toll on a lot of people. Even I remember my own journey. I think the first night was very difficult because you think that you might be among the best, and
Mm-hmm.
when you don't get an offer, you feel there is something seriously wrong, and you go into introspection, you go into a lot of questioning. So maybe I wasn't that shattered, but yeah, it was very tough night for me to sleep. And maybe when I emerged the other day, I was very calm. I was more hopeful. I think you tend to be more optimistic because that's how it is. But I remember, had it been, let's say, few days for me continuing like that, when you have these, you call it so-called failure, that you could not land up a job offer, you start doubting yourself more often. So I've seen those days. I had the opportunity because I was in a 5-year program, and I had seen my batchmates gone through the journey. So I think that stuck with me. I did not want. I wanted this experience to be as smooth as possible. I don't think that as a placement coordinator I could control it, but at least the aspiration was that can we get more and more people across the line as fast as possible in the least effort manner, so that the journey is smooth. So we talked about, let's say, placement preparation. Can we help people understand what they want so that they apply at the right places? It's not a mad rush because everybody was applying every. So if you apply every company, you are going to get failure from n number of companies. So, so how do we basically smoothen the process? So we did a lot of placement workshops. We did those so-called mock interviews, mock GD sessions during the year, so that when the time comes, it is better. However, realistically, when I look back, I realized that every effort was still fall short of what we could have done, and I felt that we could have done much better. Personally, at an individual level, I can share a story which happened with me and that opened my eye. So I remember there was one of the I am Lucknow guys. He was there around the campus and he offered to, let's say, help people with placements, and he was a
Mm-hmm.
good friend. And we sought his help, and I remember just one day before the placement, we all suited up. That was the first time when you have your tailor-made suits, you suit up. I remember still bicycling all the way around 2.5 kilometers outside the gate, and we had a small room where we were just going to sit for those mock interviews. So the whole experience of preparing for placement, it itself was an ordeal, and it was very funny because you are suited up, you are trying to bicycle, and you have these one file where you have like couple of prints of your resume, which you thought that it is the best. You don't want to show it to anybody else. But
Yeah.
the moment I entered that premises, I got my chance to get interviewed, and the first question I was asked was, "Tell me about yourself." And I remember that like maybe those 15, 30 seconds when your heart was pounding, it was as if it will come out, and I couldn't think anything. It was like blank. And then I felt that that was just the simplest question which you I could have expected, and I was least prepared for it. And
Mm.
thereafter, I also got, let's say, random questions like, okay, your name is Anand. How do you relate to the character in movie Anand? And I was
Okay.
like, wondering, like, I am a technical graduate. Are these kind of questions going to be asked? And this was what I was thinking while the person is asking the question. Do I try to uh, give my best possible version of whatever I think is right? But all that showed my level of unpreparedness, even being the placement coordinator at that point of time. Uh, however, however, I think that jolt and that I think feeling of failure was was very helpful. I think the next day morning when I went for my, let's say, first interview, I was so relaxed. I think I had least anxiety about what will happen, because I think you would have experienced the worst. You had prepared mentally yourself for all the possibilities, and the whole idea was that can you be calm, can you respond, can you listen, can you address a question as it is being asked. So I'm just sharing this experience because, like I said, being the placement coordinator, this was very unnerving. This was also very uh, difficult for me to digest that I was the least prepared for myself. So that was one experience. Other than that, I think our worldview around which company to join, which sectors were still very ill-formed. Maybe had you thought about, let's say, your career options better earlier, I would have uh, had a very different journey, or maybe I would have thought about what possible things I need to do. But when I look in hindsight, I think all things add up as my journey has progressed. But yeah, at that point of time, I see that the level of preparedness was quite low.
Yeah. So this tells us that even IITians need preparation. And secondly, that has stayed consistent. What was relevant then, it is even more relevant today. So there was
Definitely.
some, yeah, there were some great points. I have a couple of questions. Let's take a couple of questions now. So I'll just showcase that on the screen also. I have an ID called Inquire, which who he or she asked that you said there were things you wished you knew before you started working. Can you share some examples? So we want you to go to the micro level. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
So it says that you said there were things you wished you knew before you started working. Can you share some examples?
Okay. I have a long list. Everything I struggle with, I put in that bucket list that could I have known earlier. But yeah, let me keep it very brief to my first 0 2 years of experience.
Yeah.
I think when I stepped into what are the things I learned, maybe that will help you understand what I could have known earlier. So
Yeah.
very simple first understanding around that you always think yourself as an individual and you think that you are the one. Work is given to you, you perform, and it gets done. However, then you start understanding that in a real world scenario, any task or any meaningful work is not achieved only by one person. It involves many more people, either front facing or at the back end, but it requires a whole team effort. So, how do you work in teams? I might have actually had some experience working in teams, building teams, but it's another level when you step into a workplace, a formal workplace, how do you work within teams, and you have very different kind of people. I think in college everything happens in yari dosti.
Hmm.
So college, everybody is nice, everything is you think that okay, but sab chalta hai, no problem. Even if something goes wrong, it's like okay, give a treat, have a treat, and things are settled. But in a workplace, things are very very different. So how do you work with other set of people? How do you derive on their efficiencies, their inefficiencies? How do you derive from their insights and capabilities and work as a team to achieve something? I think that's the biggest learning which I had. Had I been, let's say, exposed to that kind of thing earlier, I would have been maybe tad better than what I let's say did. Second thing is even basic things like Word, Excel, PPT. So I remember a lot of seniors used to say that, अरे कॉर्पोरेट में जाके ये सब काम नहीं आएगा, टेक्निकल वर्ड एक्सेल पीपीटी करना पड़ेगा. I used to say think like what rubbish. ऐसा नहीं होता होगा. But to a certain extent it was true. The only thing is because we looked at all these tools as tools, and right sense these are tools, but there is a whole approach which goes behind when you use these tools. Those approach, those structured thinking, your ability to build mental models, your ability to construct a problem, break down a problem. Maybe some of that we learned in college or our schooling, but it wasn't told the way it should have been told. In college or school, it was always that there is going to be a fixed problem and there is going to be a fixed answer.
Hmm.
And सबका आंसर सेम आएगा, तुम्हारा डिफरेंट आया तो you are there is some problem with you. So,
Hmm.
however, the real life scenario is everything is an open book examination, open ended question. You have to frame the question, you have to make your own assumptions with the variables and maybe values, and you have to come up with your own answer and in your own method of arriving at the answer. This kind of scenario is not taught in colleges. How do you frame open ended questions? How do you solve open ended questions? It has never been taught. Maybe some of the professors who tried it in our curriculum, we used to curse them because we thought that this was unfair to give a question where we were supposed to guess what values we have to take and give an answer. So, like I said, so that's the predominant mindset. And how do you get out of that mindset? And that shift in mindset does not happen on its own. It takes a lot of time for you to realize this, and then you start adjusting. So that's another thing which I learned while I was there in my early part of the journey. Other things like design thinking, other things like how do you think very very like architecture. So I worked with some architects early in my career, true architects. So
Hmm.
people who actually conceptualize spaces, build buildings, and design. And then I was fascinated with the way designers and architects they were used to approach a problem set, and they work on blank canvas. They will take up a user brief, they will try to understand what user wants, and they have to create everything. Now that kind of visualization, so the power of visualization. Now some of these things are not taught in colleges.
Hmm.
Maybe if you're an architect, you will learn it and you will do it, but it is very restricted to a trade. Now some of these things apply in every domain of your work. So the power of visualization works whether you are a product professional, whether you are a research professional, whether you are just a salesperson or whatever. It does not matter. Your power of visualization actually helps a lot. So that thing when I learned while working with people, that helped. Maybe had I learned it earlier in college somehow, I remember some of the engineering graphics and those courses I did. It was meant to brush up your visualization and actually do things, but I didn't realize that they were far meaningful and far impactful as you go ahead. So that's again those things. If I talk about very small things, maybe something which you can relate to, like I said, Word, Excel, PPT. Even if you can do it at a better proficiency, it will put you in a better orbit. Dealing with data, I think we always used to treat data analysis like statistics, but in true sense, you need very basic statistics. Each one of us needs to know because those aptitude questions which appeared in CAT or GMAT or whatever, you end up doing those things in your real life because you are making decisions mentally and
Hmm.
those analysis you are doing. So I think another things which I learned was how like decision models. If you have to choose between two options, how do you decide option A versus option B? How do you decide if you have four options? How do you decide if you have n number of options? So your decision making models, you need to understand early. And we were fortunate that I used to work with certain peers or let's say certain seniors whom I could learn very fast. But I'm not sure like how many people get such kind of opportunity in their career. So these are some of the things which I can recount. Maybe communication, interpersonal skills, those foundational behavioral skills. How do you basic etiquettes, basic email writing? I remember there were times I used to write email and somebody advised me very simple thing. Please do not send the email when you are agonized or you are in a different emotional state. Just write it, save as a draft, and send it the next day. That very simple advice and helped me understand that when you write and when you speak and when you deal with people, you have to think a lot. So these very small things of what you communicate, how you communicate, when do you communicate what, when you have to say no, when you have to say yes, when you have to be more firm, when you have to be more accommodative, all those things. I think you learn a lot when you are in the workplace. If one is let's say used to such things early in their life, it's going to help a lot. So that is how I see it. I hope I
I
have
think,
answered your
yeah,
question.
and I think your solution addresses a lot of it also, right? This problem statement. That's great. Thanks, Anand. I have another question here from Madhav Koshish, who asks, what are the learnings from your engineering education which help you in the startup world?
Oh, a lot. I think I still there are times when I consider that I'm still a hardcore engineer. Uh, I still go back to maybe engineering concepts or science concepts. I think in our engineering it was 50% science, 50% engineering core discipline. Uh, First thing is whether you are an entrepreneur or you are a working professional, you are always going to encounter problems. So having a problem solving mindset, that I think engineering gives you. That actually comes from my training. So how do you solve problems? So having a problem solving mindset. Another thing is how do you solve problems? So having a first principle problem solving mindset. So sometimes you don't go by saying that okay, this problem needs to be solved in Y way because that is how it has been solved earlier. You try to take a fundamental approach and you say that okay, let me look at what are the underlying reasons for this problem and let me solve it in a way which is needed for this situation. So the same problem will reoccur and every time you might have to solve it in a very different way. You can't solve the same problem in only that way just because you were told that way. So having a first principle problem solving mindset is something which I consider as a byproduct of let's say engineering education. Second byproduct, which may not be the intent, but adhering to deadlines, trying to tend to deadlines, submit assignments at the nth hour. I think that is something which you need. Which if somebody would have, so there were some people who were always let's say well prepared, well adjusted, can submit even early. But then there are people like me who are like the last moment. So that kind of last moment, it's like 0000 hours. So 11:59 पे submit button दबाने वाले लोगों में से. So if you have lived that life, I think you will appreciate even that is a skill set because there are times when there will be mad rush when you're in a workplace. There are very exorbitant, unreasonable demands made to you, which you think is impossible. And in those situations, those are the kind of life skills which come into picture. Your ability to respond to, let's say, very extreme emergency situations, and that's something I think I credit to engineering education that you are put in a situation where you have to respond to deadlines more frequently. Another thing I think engineering education is also about uh, solving things in a very structured manner. So there is going to be a method to solve it. It's not very abstract. So I think that's another thing which I learned. Structured approach to solving a problem. So every time you solve a problem, you are thinking ahead that if this problem reoccurs, will you be able to avoid it or eliminate it, or you are going to solve it better? So that mindset actually comes from engineering education, the structured approach of solving things. Another thing which I can, let's say, also relate is engineering is also about approximations. So there is no right or wrong solution. Even in engineering, I think I remember a lot of design courses we did, and there was no we used to, all of us used to have the same answer, but in reality, the tolerances, the errors, your method remains the same. You also make some approximations. So the difference between engineering and science is that engineering is all about real world problems and real world approximations. So from ideal to real world is what engineering is all about, and this is true for even our workplace. You have these idealistic theories which you learn in colleges, but when you go and implement that theory in actual real practice, you realize that that's another level of thinking process required. It's not going to be that easy to apply the same concept in a real world. So I think these are the byproducts of maybe our education system, and it is a great design because you learn these things right from your college days. However, yeah, same can hold good for anybody. So somebody who comes from arts background, they are trained in a very very different manner. So there are certain things which come very difficult, which is looks very difficult for me, comes very naturally for them. Like I
Mm.
talked about architects. So there are certain things which are very natural for architects to
Yeah.
think, but very difficult for, let's say, a person like me to even fathom and perform.
All right, great. Thank you. We have time for one more question, which is kind of a little different from what we are talking, but very related to what we are trying to do and what we are doing. Again, I'm taking a question from the same ID inquired. Now, this person asked that EdTech seems to have a lot of layoffs recently. Are you concerned about the future of EdTech?
Oh, so it's a very very current affairs question.
Mm.
Uh, since maybe we are doing this at this point of time, maybe this question is, maybe if you just go a month back, the story is very very different. However, for anybody who would have, let's say, stayed in this segment for long, so I have seen all these ups and downs, at least in my career so far. And it's not just only at tech; it's true for any startup,
Yeah.
because I consider that building a startup is like playing the survival game every day. So it's also like, you remember like playing your video games on your smartphones. I don't remember like anybody who can just plays any new game and clears every level without, let's say, losing a life. So you play it again and again every stage. You become perfect and then you go to the next stage. So maybe not a right analogy, but this is how things work even in a real world. That uh, when you are building new something new, innovative, and if you see, I think COVID pandemic proved it that edtech was a very very great enabler as far as education went.
Yeah.
Had we not been doing, let's say, had edtech not come into picture, and this would have happened in 1980s, situation would have been very different. We would have
Yes.
responded very differently.
Yes.
Since it was in year 2020, and India, fortunately, as a country, was already the I'll say epicenter for edtech in a way. So we could respond much better. We could actually move much better, and edtech has actually gained a lot from even such disruption which happened. However, this happens with all entrepreneurs. We are too optimistic for future, and we tend to actually to move fast, to build fast. You tend to over resource, overestimate things, and there are times when things fall flat and things don't go your way. Obviously, you have to make tough decisions. So I think this is to those people who are sitting on the other side trying to make tough decisions. It's not easy. It's very very painful. Let me tell you, like, it's, you have sleepless nights. It doesn't. It's, nobody likes that. At the same time, I think that yes, things can be always done better if you are more responsive, if you are more empathetic, if you are more responsible. I think the word which I relate to is responsibility. I think if we behave responsibly, if we are responsible, you can actually handle things better. I still don't think that it will satisfy everyone, but at least things can be a little better than what we encounter in our own lives. Having said that, if you really talk about future of acting, it's very very bright. I think we have just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
Whatever we are doing is just what very very primitive. I think 10 years from now, each one of us are going to say that it was too primitive of what we were doing back in 2022. And sitting at 2022, I think that what we were doing in, let's say, 2015, I was doing in 2015 was still a very, very early phase of edtech. And things have moved a lot. But one thing which is common and, let's say, going to remain is that this whole sector is about enabling the whole learning ecosystem, enabling and building the whole human capital. So that's the aspiration. I think most of the entrepreneurs, most of the team members, everybody who's working and powering up this sector is actually having this aspiration that this will change the game. If there is another way of changing the game by building more brick and mortar schools, by building more brick and mortar colleges, I think that let's do it. But the challenge with our country is that our needs are so huge and our resources are limited that we have to find the middle ground. So इस देश में compromise तो करना पड़ता है, चाहे आप चाहो या ना चाहो. And I think we are moving beyond compromise by using innovative solutions to actually deal with the situation. So EdTech is the answer. The future of EdTech is definitely bright. The future of education is also bright because right from government to individuals to I think companies to professionals, everybody is trying hard so that we become more competitive and we try to make sure that there are other people around us who are benefited by the whole change. So with that aspiration, I think to me, it's going to be another next 10, 15 years. So it's going to be the game changer for Indian education ecosystem.
Yes, I was just reading somewhere the other day that edtech is mostly right now the major players are in the K-12 segment, a lot of them. And it's not even the 5% of that population that right now in the past so many years edtech has been able to go and touch. So, and we are talking about not only K-12, we are talking about beyond K-12, we are talking about a lot of other segments. So, I mean, like, it's not even the tip of the iceberg because they say it's 10% and 90. I would rather say maybe it's a 2 and 98 that we are. So, it is 98% that is going to be yet to be discovered, and we'll see a lot of revolutionary, innovative stuff happening. Completely agree.
Yeah, you are.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. You're right. I think at this point of time, EdTech is still a very, very nascent stage.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think even 5 years from now, we will still say the same because the imagination of what it can be is like huge. It can
Right.
be voluminous. And wherever we are is just a very small percentage and fraction. However, having said that, maybe let me pull some trends which I think will become the order of the day. So, for example, you talked about learning. Now, I think learning is one of the fundamental needs of human being.
Hmm.
So whether we like it or not, whatever we do, we pursue arts, we pursue entertainment, we pursue whatever we do. I think there's always a craving to learn something new
Yeah.
because we as human beings we get bored as well, and learning is a way where we tend to become better and also tend to acquire new things in our life. So one is that learning is a very, very fundamental need, and technology is going to enable that to a very, very different degree. So that's one fundamental thing. The trends which are visible now is that the adoption of online learning is now established
Hmm.
post COVID. I don't think there is any dispute around that. So we have achieved a great consumer behavioral change that online learning is now a main is going to remain as a mainstay option. Earlier, I remember people used to say कि लेके देख लो क्या होता है. But
Hmm.
now there are real people who are using online learning as their main primary option. Third thing is that in pursuit of learning, there are times people are constrained either by money, by their geography, by their access, by their socio-cultural
Hmm.
or gender limitations. All those constraints are going to get broken down by access to technology and by newer ways of learning. So, lot of demo. I think we will see a lot of breaking down of these barriers eventually. That will also propel many more individuals to actually benefit from the whole thing. Another key shift which we are seeing is that people are very very eager to actually upskill. Be it a school going kid or a professional like me, we are now more interested in upskilling ourselves on our own rather than, let's say, either a company or a parent actually pushing us. So the urge to learn along with the ease of access is enabling another behavioral change that there is a urge to upskill or learn on our own without a push from your external environment, like your employer or your parents. So
Yeah.
that's a very, very big change. It is going to propel a lot of people to actually pursue whatever they like. And so pursuing your passion is earlier used to be like a cliched thing. It's going to happen more often because people are going to pursue their passion more frequently. Use that, use that, let's say, learning, knowledge, and passion to actually build something which is more meaningful. And like currently we're talking about entrepreneurship in this forum, maybe the next generation is going to be gig entrepreneurs, so gigpreneurs. So gigpreneurship is something which is going to be it's going to democratize the whole entrepreneurship in future. So that's how I see things.
Great, great. Yeah, thanks for the question, inquired. So, Anand, the conversation was so engrossing that we didn't realize, but we have overshot the time. But
Yeah.
I'm yet not ready to let you go. We'll just sum this up, and I would just want to ask you that if you have to just give two or three things that people, the young youth who is going to be professionals, who is starting work, whether entrepreneur or into the jobs, to take away or remember as a mantra, as something that they can fall back upon, what it would be?
I'll first start with self because in this virtual world, there are times when you forget yourself.
Hmm.
So the first thing is believe in oneself, and having that confidence on oneself is the biggest, I think, thing in my mind one needs to have. Once you have this belief in yourself, then that's the foundation for you to dream big.
Yeah.
So I'm not endorsing any other brand which has this term, but yeah, you need to dream big because when you dream big, and then third is like you need to put in efforts to actually back it up. So nothing comes easy. Whether you come from you are born with silver spoon, you come from tier one college, or you come from tier one city.
Hmm.
I think the level playing field. Uh, I think what I have witnessed recently, and what I think is going to happen is that it's going to be more level playing field for a lot of people to actually uh, do things and excel. That these foundational things will help us in achieving and achieving success. So believing in oneself, dreaming big, and actually backing it up with the right effort. So these are the three things which I would like to at least have as a mantra for success in future.
Great, great. Thanks a lot. We've spoken about some extremely valuable and relevant points today, and I'm very, very sure that this conversation would hold a lot of value for the young professionals today. And uh, the points that we've spoken are going to stay relevant today, tomorrow, and beyond. So, I would like to thank you again once more for taking this time out and having this conversation with us. It was very enriching. I am sure you enjoyed it as much as we did, as our viewers did, and hope to see you soon again sometime. Thank you. I'd like to thank all the viewers also, and we would see you again very soon, maybe next week, with another stream of ours. Thank you. Good night. Good night,
Definitely.
Anand.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Amrita, and thank you everyone out here. I think this was a great experience for me as well. Recollect some of my journey thus far. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. We have some more questions, but we would not be able to take them. Sorry for that. We are over time. Maybe we would try to respond to you in the chat thread. Thanks, Anand. Good night.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye bye.